Hello and welcome back to another edition of Check It Out. Okay friends, in today's video I'm going to walk you through my experience changing this guy out, which was leaking from down here, somewhere in here, and putting in this brand new one right here. I'll walk you through it. Again, I'm just documenting my experience. I strongly recommend that you have a professional come and do this for you. Anyway, I'm going to document my experience. I'll show you also where I purchased this guy here. I could not find it at my local Home Depot or hardware. I actually had to go online. But if you look down in the description below, I'll put a link to where I purchased this. The model number and other important information is over here on the side of this gas valve. And that's what I used to order a new one of these guys online. Now, I had to wait 2 days to get this guy in the mail. I ended up taking this off, and that way I could diagnose what the problem was, and then I ended up putting it all back together to wait for those 2 days. However, if I was going to do this again, I think I would have just left this exactly as it sat, kept the water turned off, kept the gas to this appliance turned off, and that way I could just leave it there for those 2 days. What I ended up doing is removing it, ordering the new part, and then putting it all back together. And of course, for those 2 days, you've got to leave the gas off, got to leave the water off. It's leaking on me. This guy, if we take a look, it looks like the leak, I don't see, if I put this here, if you see, it doesn't look like it's leaking from here. It looks like it's actually coming from inside this valve and inside this valve here. So I'm going to show you my plan of action, what I've done so far, and what I'm going to do next. So first and foremost, to turn this guy off safely, here's what I've done. Turn this guy to perpendicular. This is the gas going to this appliance. That's number one. Number two, I did turn this guy to off as well. And then this up here is my water supply going to the hot water heater. So I've turned this guy right here to perpendicular, turning off the water supply to this appliance. The good news about turning it off there too is that I'll still have cold water going to the rest of my house. The good news is I think I'm going to get away with not having to replace the entire water heater. And that makes a lot of sense because after doing my homework online, it looks like this is the main culprit right here. This little unit, again, is causing some issues. If you've seen my other videos, you know that this thing can be have some troubles with it. So anyway, I'm going to replace that guy. And I found one online. And I have to say, does it stink going without hot water for 2 days? Yes. However, I was surprised. For a little over $100, 130, somewhere in that range, I could get a new unit like this one here and not have to go through the hassle of trying to change out the whole water heater and that whole thing. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I've already taken this guy apart. I've diagnosed it. I know what's wrong with it. At least I have a pretty good idea. I then put it back together just for demonstration purposes so I could show and make this video on exactly how to take it apart, how to put a new one in. Now, I do want to give you a word of caution that this is something that you might want to have a licensed contractor, a professional come out and do for you, but at least it could help you out to understand what might be going on with your water heater. Unless you're really checked out with gas and understand how that works, I strongly suggest you don't try to do this one on your own. Okay, let's move forward. So as I've said, the water is turned off to this unit and the gas I turned off right here. If I wanted to be more secure with the gas turned off, of course I could turn it off at the house, but don't forget if you turn it off outside the house, that means no other appliances in your house get gas. If I turn it off right here, it's only turning it off to the water heater. And that goes the same with this guy up here. So I've turned off this red valve right here, turned it perpendicular to the pipe so that no cold water is going into my water heater. But the one thing that you have to be careful with, or I had to be careful with, and I learned my lesson on, is that this guy can have water come back down this pipe. So what happens is, especially it looks like it's with the faucets that have a, like a 2-into-1, if you will, like a kitchen sink where you can turn it up and just slightly turn it to the cold or to the hot. I feel like some of that water is leaking back into this tank right here. And what happens is I'd come out here after using the sink and a small amount of water would be getting into the tank and then coming out of this guy here. So what I've done is drained the tank and hooked up a garden hose here. Have to use a screwdriver and turn this guy counterclockwise to open it. So I have drained the tank by doing that. Of course, the gas was off prior to doing that, as well as the water turned off. And that took a long time. So I don't know if it's because my tank has a lot of sediment or what the reason is, but it was really trickling out of the hose. But I gently took this guy off and I learned a lesson. Obviously there was still water in it because it started squirting everywhere. So I strongly recommend waiting longer to make sure that this water is completely out of the tank, or at least as much as possible. Now, one little trick to that is you could loosen, I actually took off this water pipe right here so air could get in here to help that water flow out of there faster. But again, it still took quite a bit of time for that to happen. So I made sure that the water was completely out of there before I moved on to the next step. So here's the way this works, is to try taking this stuff apart here. I used a screwdriver real gently on the top of this guy here, and at the same time pulling from the bottom right here, and this guy just kind of pops straight out. Took a little wiggling, little tugging, but wasn't too bad. And then I used some channel locks, or an adjustable wrench like this guy here. This is an awfully big one. I have a smaller one too. But basically just turn these guys here. So, and this guy here, this little one here. So remove those two pipes right there. And then, like I said, these guys are all loose because I just did this for demonstration purposes. When you pull this down and away, you want to be real careful we don't kink either one of these two pipes. These are pretty delicate. So just kind of gently, carefully tug them away to give a little bit of room. And then this wire right here, this is meant to disconnect. So we just pull that guy apart like so. All right, now over here to our gas side. So the way this particular setup is done is that I'm going to loosen this guy here, and I've actually already done it. So I can just take it off by hand. But of course, what we would need to do is get a wrench like this, bop, and it'll be pretty tight. So that first one you have to tug pretty good on. And then the second thing is I want to be smart about this. This guy is going to be tight, and I can see that they used pipe dope, pipe thread, Teflon tape, whatever we want to call it. So this has some sealant in here, which means that this guy is going to be harder to break that seal on and start loosening it. So I want to go ahead and loosen this, or at least start to, before I take this unit off. This is going to be tight, and also taking this unit right here off is going to be tight. So what I'm going to do is get my large adjustable wrench like this guy here, put it onto here, and then turn it. And this is such a large wrench that I can just gently turn it and it really moves pretty quickly. But I've done this enough times to tell you that that guy does take a little bit of muscle to get that out. So now I've got this guy loose, so that's good. And then the second thing I'm going to do is dive into taking this actual unit off right here. So here's what I want to do. I'm actually going to take this guy all the way out. And I'm actually going to put in a small piece of gas pipe that I just had kind of sitting around. And I'm going to put it into here. I'll see if I can do this one-handed. And I want to make sure that I turn it several times. I want to get lots of threads on there. Nice and snug, right to the point where I'd have to use a wrench. And now that I have lots of threads on here, I'm actually going to use this as a tool. And the reason I'm going to do that is that this unit here has a lot of plastic and nonsense going on. And what I need to do is loosen that guy up there. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to turn down on this. Now I've already loosened it a bit, and I can tell you this pipe really helped a whole lot. So put my hand all the way at the end for leverage and give it a tug down. So again, I loosened it a little, made that look a little easy, but that, in my opinion, is the way to do it. And now that I've kind of broken that seal and started to loosen it, I'm going to go ahead and take this pipe out. Now this guy has started to be loosened, so I can loosen it up. I might take two hands here. I might have to put down the camera. Let me see what I can do. All right, I think I got it started there. So now I have the control valve off. You can see right there, this pipe actually goes right into where the water is. So again, warning that this water, make sure that this guy is on, and I would leave it on, draining out. And I just left it open the last couple days because, again, the cold water, when I turn it on in the house, like if our washing machine goes on, it sends a small amount of hot water kind of backwards into this guy, and it fills up the tank a little bit. So keep this open. That is a word of caution. So when I open this, a small amount of water dripped down here. But anyway, let's take a look. Here's our valve. Ooh, and there's our new valve. Yay! So here's our valve, and here's where we went wrong. Let's see. Hopefully the camera can kind of pick this up. But this guy here, this probe, actually sticks into the water. So this is sitting in the hot water. And this guy right here has a little crack in it. Let's see if I can get it so I can show you. If you look right, okay, you see that? So let's see how I'm pushing down. And that little bit right there, that little bit's enough that water's getting into there, and it's basically the leak was just coming from inside. And just kind of doing a quick comparison of these two guys. So they look almost identical from the knobs to the lights to the connection pieces. And this guy here is the old one. So our connection pieces, right? And it looks like it's, I mean, just nearly identical. And of course, those green things are just caps that will end up taking off for protection. Ah, look at that guy. Interesting. This one is metal. Appears to be some kind of a metal compound, where this one seems to be more of a plastic. While I was waiting for this new unit to come in the mail, I made sure I put this back onto the water heater nice and firm. While it is cracked and has a small amount of water that might leak out, if water is going to make its way back into my water tank because of the washing machine and other appliances and faucets that might have water leaking back into this tank, a small amount, I want to make sure that most of that goes down this hose. So keeping this guy open and keeping that hose on here going to the outside and keeping this guy on nice and firm will help to make sure that I don't have water leaking all over the place. Also, I put a small bucket underneath this guy right here, so any water leaking out, the small amount, I could capture easily. For the 2 days while I was waiting to get this part in, I reattached these gas pipes here. I leak checked them by turning on this gas here and using some leak check like this guy here. And then I made sure that I turned this gas back to the off position, and I actually duct taped this gas in the off position just to make sure that it wouldn't get turned on. If by any chance it did get turned on, maybe one of my kids was screwing around or something like that, I know that I've got this reattached. I've leak checked this just to triple check and make sure that we wouldn't have any issues. Next, I'll kind of walk through the instructions. But we could press pause here and read through this just to see exactly what we're getting into. Thought I skipped a page. Looks like I didn't. All right, just to show what it is. Next, I'm going to take a look in here and just make sure that this is clean and free of debris. And now I'm going to gently go ahead and insert this guy. So again, it looks to me like it's got some kind of a Teflon material there, so I am not going to put that on. Otherwise, I think I would have. But let's go ahead and, of course, we'll be real gentle as we put it in, make sure we don't do any cross-threading. So as I'm tightening this up, I'm going to go back to this trick again, and I'm just going to put on some 1/2-inch pipe, gently hand tighten it, make sure I get plenty of threads on there nice and firm, and then I can use that as a tool to help me tighten this guy around here. Now that I've got this nice and tight and firm, I'm going to go ahead and close down this guy here, and I will reattach this pipe here. I'm going to go ahead and put some water in there and just double check and make sure I don't have any water leak back here. So I am filling up my tank as we speak, and in the background you might hear that I've opened up a hot water faucet to help let some of the air out that's inside the tank while it's filling up with water. And while that's happening, I'm taking a check back here. I did make sure that I turned this real nice and firm, but I want to check back here and make sure that I don't have any leaks. So I will check it. It looks fantastic now, and of course I'll keep an eye on that and check it again as we move on. Okay, the tank is full, no water leaks, so that's great news. Now we're going to move down here. We'll take off this cap right here. And again, the manufacturer just put that on to help make sure that this stays nice and clean. And then we'll take this guy off too. And it looks like I'll need a wrench for that one. And again, that's just a cap that they're putting on there to keep any debris and whatnot from getting in there. So now we are ready to move forward with putting these guys on here. So I'm going to install this guy to here. And they tell you, because of the type of fitting that this is, that we're actually not going to put any kind of Teflon tape or anything like that on either one of these two, right? So this is the gas going from the control into the assembly, and this is, of course, the pilot, but we're not going to put any kind of Teflon or anything on these two. So we're just going to gently place them in, and we'll tighten them up. Okay, so now I've installed and tightened the gas from that control down into the assembly unit, and I've also put this pilot in. I have to say, these took some like kind of wiggling. I had to use one hand and sort of push them up, keep it firm, and then wiggle these guys on. Of course, I did them hand tight to make sure that I don't cross thread them, and then I put them on, and I made sure that I was pretty firm with them, but at the same time, we're talking about brass and aluminum, and I don't want to be breaking those, so I'm not tightening them as hard as I can, but I'm just making sure they're nice, firm, tight. Of course, I used my adjustable wrench to make sure that I got these guys nice, tight, and firm. This is made out of aluminum and out of brass, so I'm not going to crank it down as hard as I possibly can, but at the same time, I want to use my wrench and make sure that I get both these guys nice and firmly tight. Okay, so next, I have this little brass fitting here that connects to my gas flex, and that's what connects these two guys together. So I need to clean up this part over here if I don't have a new one, which would have probably been a good idea to put a new one on right now. I'm going to reuse my old one, so I'm going to clean up all these threads right here. I've got this little brush guy here that I think works pretty darn good. And again, I'll put a link in the description below. You can get something like that if you don't have one. So I'm going to clean this guy up. We're going to put some new pipe dope on there. Now this other end over here is a compression fitting. So this end over here is not supposed to get pipe dope, and we will not put it on there. Next, they tell us not to use the Teflon tape type of a sealant. So do not use thread tape sealants to seal the gas supply control. And they say use a pipe dope compound to seal the connection. So that's what this stuff is here. So they don't want that Teflon tape style. So this is the compound I'm using. And you can see here I put a liberal amount on right here. I try to keep those first two threads right here kind of clean. I might even clean it up a little bit more with my fingernail before I put it into this hole here. But, and I might just put a tiny bit more pipe dope on there, but that looks pretty good. As far as wrenches to tighten these pipes, I'm going to start with an 8-inch guy right here, 8-inch adjustable wrench. And then I use this guy right here as a big old monster 15-inch. This guy, though, works so well as far as getting leverage to make sure everything's nice and snug and tight. Okay, next, I've tightened this guy down really well. So let me show you what I did. I used a backer wrench. And then I put my second wrench right here. And what I did is, as I used my larger wrench to really push down on this and tighten this piece, at the same time I was putting somewhere around equal pressure pulling up on this black-handled one. So my backer I'm pulling up as I'm tightening down with my piece that I actually want to tighten down. So trying to use a backer to make sure I don't break that valve. I did this, it's already done. I used quite a bit of pressure to make sure that I got this right. It's nice and firm in there. Next, I'm going to do the same thing here. Tighten this guy, hand tight. Then I'm going to put my wrench on here to tighten it. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I get a backer on here. So I'll put my backer right on this guy here. Tighten it up. All right. So again, it's a pretty good amount of pressure I'm putting on here. I need to make sure that both of these two pieces, this one here and this one here, both of these joints are nice and firm and tight. Okay, my next step is to check for leaks. I've got an old bottle of leak check right here. I've got a newer one right here. I'm going to use this guy. So I've shaken it up. I like to get lots of suds on here. And what I'm going to do is turn on the gas. I know that all my joints are nice and tight. And now we're going to go and leak check them. So I'm going to get this leak check right here, and I'm going to put it right onto these joints. I want to put a liberal amount. I'm going to check the front, the back. I'm going to check underneath. I'm going to get all sides and make sure I'm really looking closely, making sure that I'm getting all the joints. I even like to get this guy right here. So here and here and here, and check anywhere these are coming together is basically what my plan is to do. And then once the water heater's up and going, I'm also going to come back and I'm going to check these two guys right here. Now these won't have gas in them until I'm up and going. When I leak check these two pipes here, I want to make sure that this burner down here is on and drawing gas down through this tube. But I'll go ahead and do those as well. After my water heater's up and going for about 5 minutes, by the way, I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to leak check this one more time. I'm going to go to every single joint and leak check them again. And the whole point of that is, hey, why not be cautious? Why not be careful? And if they're going to put all of these warning signs on my water heater, obviously there's been issues in the past. So I want to make sure that I'm as cautious as I possibly can be. Okay, the time has come to light this water heater off. I am very excited. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Turn this guy down to pilot. Now I'm going to do a mental checklist in my head. The water is on. I know that there's cold water in this tank. I know that I've turned a hot water faucet on to purge out all the air. I have double checked all of my gas fittings. I've leak checked them. I know I'm all set in these areas. I've turned on the gas and I am ready to go. So now I'm going to put this guy into pilot. I'm going to double check and read all of these one more time. I'm going to make sure that I smell for gas all the way around, including at floor level. Of course, if I did smell gas at this point, I would not try to light this water heater. They have specific directions right here on exactly what to do if I did smell gas. So I would just follow these directions right here if I did smell gas. Again, I don't smell any gas, so we'll go ahead and light this. And then I'm going to go ahead and light it off. So I push in the pilot, and now I'm going to start pushing on the zapper guy right here. Now one thing I want to keep in mind is that this tube right here was turned off right here. So this all has to fill up with gas before this pilot's going to light. So we have to kind of purge the system a little bit. Now this particular flex that I have going is kind of thin, so it's probably not going to take too long. And our instructions say to do this for 90 seconds, and if it doesn't light after 90 seconds, then you're supposed to stop, wait 10 minutes, and then start again. So I've been lucky enough though, if I look right here, my status is blinking, telling me, hey, my pilot is lit, I am ready to go. I'm ready to turn this from pilot over to one of the settings and hear the joyous sound. Hopefully, there it is, of that hot water, the burner coming on to heat it up. Nice. So as I've said before, I'm going to, as a final step, come through and leak check every single one of these gas fittings just to make sure, safety first. And I'm also going to come up here, double check my water fitting since I was messing around with that, make sure that I don't have any leaks on that either. Hey, what great news. The hot water, it's coming, it's almost here. Had to wait 2 days for it, but it's on the way. So, hey, I hope this video helped you out. If it did, please help me out. Hit that subscribe button. Look down in that description below. And again, I'll put some of these parts and this kind of stuff. Again, I strongly recommend that you have a pro take care of this, but maybe this video will give you an idea that you don't have to change out the whole water heater, especially if it's a newer water heater. Newer, I say 6 years, that seems pretty new to me. If you're extremely handy and you really know how gas works and you've had practice putting gas fittings together and that kind of stuff, maybe it's something you want to tackle. You'll have to decide that one on your own. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.